Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our IRWD RightScape webinar series. Today's workshop is Ocean-Minded Landscaping Workshop. My name is Juan Garcia. I'm the Senior Water Efficiency Specialist with the district. And once again, thank you for joining us for this webinar. Go. A little bit of housekeeping. Please keep your microphones muted. Um, Everyone should have access to the chat feature. Any questions you might have, please submit it to the chat feature. Hopefully by the end of this workshop, we should have some time to do a little Q&A, but if not, I will be answering any questions that are submitted through the chat feature. And of course, after this workshop, we will be sending out the presentation slides for reference, and also we'll be posting the workshop on our website so you can view it at a later time. And my email that I'm going to respond or send to everybody, I will make sure to add any kind of information in regards to our programs, the slide information, and answer questions that are submitted through the chat feature. Once again, please keep your microphones muted. If you have a question, please submit it through our chat. We do have two staff members, Mr. Joey Bacariso and Ms. Melody C. Sangrit with us. So any kind of questions, they hopefully should be able to address it. So here we go. Thank you once again for joining us. This should be a fun, short but sweet workshop on just some landscaping tidbits and information that will hopefully be useful and we can implement in our properties and our homes. So a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. Just overall, when we talk about ocean-minded landscaping, it's really about looking at our overall watershed and taking that what we call the watershed approach when it comes to landscaping. Of course, our landscapes, we want to create a beautiful landscapes that accents our homes. Our homes is a showcase, and we want our landscapes to look vibrant and beautiful out there. But we've got to be wary about how much water it takes to maintain a landscape, and of course, what kind of other things are being impacted by the way we landscape. So when we look at what's called the watershed approach, there's four main things when it comes to practicing some good water or ocean-friendly landscaping practices. Creating a healthy soil, we're going to talk about today. A little bit of capturing rainwater and using it as a resource to water our landscapes and to also retain that water within our landscapes for the plants to be able to use it. The use of climate appropriate plant material is something that we're going to talk about. And of course, efficient irrigation. If we can't utilize or we don't have enough rainwater to utilize, so you got to really depend sometimes on our sprinkler system. So when it comes to our sprinkler systems or irrigation, it's important to keep them as efficient as possible. So, what is a watershed? You keep hearing or you hear that word watershed and watershed landscaping. We are in what we call our Newport Bay watershed, our service area.
Or
Yes. I think somebody had a question. If you can please submit it in our chat feature. I appreciate it. Thank you. So, a watershed is basically just our land area that's around us, and rainwater, irrigation water, any kind of water, drains into those areas. And it's just that land area where that rainwater drains into, and it can get into our creeks, our rivers, our lakes, our wetlands, and of course into our groundwater aquifer. One thing about this water, whether it's rainwater, irrigation water, or other water, it goes through it enters our watershed through our storm drain systems, and it flows into those other waterways without any kind of treatment. And there could be pollutants in that water that can be toxic not only to us but to our fish and wildlife in our area. So when we practice what's called sustainable landscaping practices, it's important to consider what we use as far as any kind of chemical applications in our landscapes, pesticides, herbicides, you name it. I mean, really got to be a little eco-conscious on the things that we use or our practices in our landscaping. And hopefully we can all walk away with something from this workshop to help us reduce our overall footprint when it comes to toxicities and so forth in our watershed. Um, so protect our watersheds, have some good landscaping practices, and be conscious of what we do in our landscapes because it affects our surroundings. Right off the bat, so they're going to get into creating a beautiful landscape because that's the ultimate goal, to have a beautiful landscape that uses a little bit of little water, hopefully. Um, so one thing when it comes to our landscapes is, we have a lot of grass areas out there. Now, grass areas are useful if they're providing a function, but if not, you really got to consider how much grass you really need. Consider reducing or eliminating the unused grass areas. Convert to climate appropriate plants. Now, that's a word that's going to be thrown around quite a bit today, climate appropriate, but we're going to talk about the two classifications of what we call our climate appropriate plants. California native plants, and we have our non-native exotic species that are acclimated, or that do well in our Mediterranean climate here in California. And consider more decorative permeable hardscapes. That's always one of those things. Hardscapes doesn't require water, does require a little bit of money, but we can have a beautiful hardscape that's permeable to allow water to get into our soils and infiltrate into the ground. So let's look at overall. So, these are numbers that I really dream about a lot, just when it comes to water use in landscaping, and grass, being one of the highest water use plant material out there. So for every 1,000 square feet of grass that you have out there, right around 25 to 35,000 gallons of water is used by that grass. Right around 4,000 plus or minus gallons per month in the summer. Just quite a bit of water that it takes to maintain a grass looking at an optimum way. So it does take quite a bit of water for grass. Now, consider converting that over to what we call a climate appropriate landscape. More medium water use plants, water thrifty plants. You can save anywhere from 30 to 50% as far as water goes. The use is around 15 to 20,000 gallons of water per year for every 1,000 square feet. And so around 2,500 plus or minus gallons per month during the summertime. So that's one of those things where there is significant savings when you go over to a climate appropriate landscape. Now, most of us, if you have a shrub bed or a planter bed, most of those plants that are utilized in landscaping nowadays, it's pretty much water, what we call medium water use plants, or medium water use plants, climate appropriate. Our grass areas are really the areas that utilize most of the water. And if you have, what we call our exotic species, tropical plants, those can be categorized a little bit higher than medium water use. So just be conscious of that type of plant material as well. Now, when we go to even a lower water use plant, we start looking at low water use plants that are classified that way. We're talking about 60 to 80% water savings, 4,000 to 12,000 gallons per year, and about 1,500 gallons plus or minus during the month. Now, one thing is, with this watershed workshop, I really want to talk about California native plants. We're going to get a little bit into this later, but next month we are having our Plant Like a Local workshop, where we're really going to get into plant material, looking at all types of plants, and creating some plant palettes for our landscapes. Now, the beauty of California native plants is, 80% plus water savings. We're building habitats for our pollinators. And look at that third bullet point, which is key: fully or partially summer dormant. Now, later on, we're going to take a look at a graph that talks about the trend of water use for native plants. Now, sometimes, we say the word plant California native plants, and people kind of go, well, I don't want a cactus garden or rock garden. No, we have so many, thousands and thousands of California native plants available to, and especially that are native to our local areas, that are evergreen. Some are deciduous. I mean, just we have a vast number of plants that'll beautify our landscapes that are not cactuses and sticks. I mean, we do have succulent plants that are natives, but we're talking about just lush plants that'll do great throughout the entire year in your landscape. Once again, that we are adding more to our overall ecosystem when we consider using California native plants. And the last bullet point there: requires little to no supplemental water once established. That's the key when it comes to native plants. You know, um, A little bit of water will make them look great, but we can really get away from the heavy water use compared to a traditional landscape. Now, one of the key things with the watershed approach, or is we do have to look at our soils. Now, it's not an easy task, but building a healthy soil is something that we can do with our landscaping practices throughout the year. And it's going to take time, but we can do that slowly but surely. We have to manage what we have, of course. One word that I hear quite a bit as far as soils goes is, heavy clay soils. And yes, we do have a lot of clay soils in the area. I mean, we have a different various soils, but it's something that we can build on. We can enrich them. We can utilize them, make them better. So don't ever fear about that. Most plants will thrive when, and of course, well-drained soils. We can create that by amending the soil somewhat, or even just creating mounds and swales to create natural drainage. So that's one thing, is to look at your soils, and try to build them up as best as possible. Now, when it comes to California native plants, what do they require? Some of them will like to have the soil as is. Um, so if you have clay soils, too sandy, too stony, too acidic, it's always a way we can utilize organic material to amend them and to make them a better soil for our plants. We could turn any kind of poor soil into a good soil. We have to think about, what is the soil made of? Weathered rock, organic material, water, air. It's important to have a nice balance of all these components. We need that oxygen in our soils. We don't want to have them compacted. We don't want to oversaturate by watering too much, because when we oversaturate our soils and our plants start to look a little bad, sometimes we start to do things that are might not be good for the landscape, such as overwatering, or start to add fertilizers when it's not needed and things like that. So, it's important to look at the overall health of our soils. I would recommend to go out there and maybe get a simple little soil moisture sensor, so you can stick in the ground and see what that soil moisture levels are. You can also get a simple little soil probe, just to take out little chunks and see how wet that soil actually is. So building up the soils, one thing about soils is, there's a lot of great, I love that point that there's soil hidden magic organisms. Our soils are made up of all these little critters and microbes, and that are not only shredding up organics, breaking down soil, creating filaments that create this symbiotic relationship with our roots and our plants. I mean, there's a lot of healthy stuff in the soil that sometimes we don't think about, that, depending on what kind of practices we're doing out there in landscape care, we could be, destroying a lot of this, especially when we start using a lot of chemicals and pesticide applications that'll start to kill off a lot of the beneficial stuff that we have out there. So there are beneficial bacteria, beneficial fungi out there, that's helping out our plants. Um, you know, it's the soil predators, the arthropods, the shredders, there's beneficial nematodes. But I mean, there's a lot of things that we have to really consider when that's going to aid our plants. It's going to aid our plants into growing healthy, breaking down nutrients, uh, that to make them available in the right forms to the plants. So once again, by keeping a healthy soil, we increase the soil life, which is going to make it a better environment for our roots of our plants and just for our plants overall. And with good watering practices, it's going to go a long way. So, uh, you know, take advantage of that. Uh, One thing about healthy soil is, we can improve it by incorporating some organics into our soils. Um, Encourage soil life. Now, one thing is, when I'm out there cleaning my landscapes or gardening, I try to let that litter lay where it's at, where it falls. I sweep into my planter areas. If you don't like that heavy debris out there, you can just go, there's a great tool that I bought. It's a mulching blower, where I can actually suck up a lot of that leaf litter, grind it up, and turn it into mulch, and just put it right back out into my planter beds. And I can also utilize some of that shredded up leaf matter to put in my compost bin. So it's really great. When you see the worms in your soil when you see little critters running around there. That's always a beneficial thing for our landscapes. Watering appropriately is always key. That way we get the water movement going through the soil properly, pulling in some of that oxygen, letting it be available to our roots and our plants. Try not to till or disturb too much of the soil when you're out there because of some that beneficial fungi filaments that are out there. As you can see in one of the slide pictures there, there's that nice little the filaments that are once again create this symbiotic relationship with our plants and the roots. Let's see. Come on, slide work. There we go. So, um, if you do need to amend your soils, what is the best amendment? One of for sandy soils, for clay soils, for any kind of soil you have. You know, I really love using compost. I love using my own compost, but it's a great way. Now, compost is broken down organic material, and compost is something that you incorporate into the soil if you're going to be doing some planting or some renovating of areas. If you do have to purchase your own, just make sure you just ask questions on how it's made, where it's made. You want to make sure you get the best quality compost, some organic material out there. Once again, if you're interested in making your own compost, there's some great little bins you can buy throughout the year. Hopefully soon, we have a great partnership with the UCANR and the Master Gardeners where we host composting workshops. We just had one in July, a big one, but hopefully we're approaching the end of the year, so hopefully this spring we'll have some workshops on composting where we can talk about traditional composting like this pictured here, and also worm composting. Worm composting it's a really fun thing to do, easy to do, and it's something you can do with the kids and have it in an area and just do some small composting that'll help your landscape out. Best supplement you can keep your garden. With compost, you start bringing in the worms and all the little critters into the soil, start helping you work that soil underneath. It's free to make, easy to make. It's about just learning how to um, mix the right materials, what we call our browns and our greens, nitrogen or carbon. Here's a nice little some information on composting. But if you go to the OC Master Gardeners website, they have some great videos and tutorials on composting. So this is just some of the information that when I do email everybody after the workshop, I'll be putting links to all these sites. But just consider composting. It's a great way to bring in that natural material, especially the material that we create in our homes, all that kitchen green waste. Utilize that, break it down, and put it right back into your landscapes. Just it'll do a world of magic for your soils. Okay, I did see somebody post something that says that I cannot see the screen. Um, I hope everybody can see your screens, but if you're having issues and not seeing your screen, please call our hotline number that was in the invitation. Hopefully they can help you out. So here's some information on what to compost. Here we call our browns, our high carbon. It's always a nice mixed, I like to use a one-to-one mix, but and of course it has to be wetted down. But look up some information. Please go to the OC Master Gardeners website for more information on composting. Like I said, they have some great videos. California native plants and soils. Well, native plants are native plants like undisturbed soil. Um, it's really about knowing your California native plants, knowing that environment they like to be in, the soils they like to be in, and that's when we can utilize, our great resources, which is our California Native Plant Society's website. It's called the CalScape.org, and once again I'll take you guys there a little bit later. but you can actually do a plant search as far as native plants and look for native plants that are local to your area and learn a little bit about them, their communities, and what kind of soils they like to be in, and try to utilize those lists for creating a plant palette. There's a great associated plant. So next month's workshop, we're going to get really into this and look at all these different types of plants, both native and non-native, and how to look at what type of environments you really like to grow into. And now, I can't say enough when it comes to having a healthy soil. One thing I always encourage everybody to is just to mulch, mulch, mulch. Mulching adds so much. Not only will it break down and become part of your soil over time, but it does retain that soil moisture. It reduces overall soil temperature, helps with erosion control. It does help control weed. One thing is that another thing that you can do is, after you're out there cleaning, you're weeding your beds or your landscape area, before laying that mulch down, I like to use good old black and white newspaper and create, like, use that as you can, if you want to use it as a weed barrier, but lay down some newspaper and then mulch right on top of that. It'll help control overall weeds, but once again, it also increases beneficial insects, earthworms, and once again, it will break down. Now, one thing also when it comes to mulch, I like to use natural mulches. I don't like to use color treated mulch or other types of mulches that might have chemicals in them and stuff. So once again, when you are buying uh, mulch, sure, you can purchase mulch in bags, but I would recommend you to go to a landscape supply yard or supply shop where you see that they sell like pallets of stone and rock for landscapes, but they also have compost, they also have mulch, they have different varieties of mulch. One type of mulch I like to use is called forest floor. I've seen it used in different names, but yes, somebody did put forest bark, but yes, forest floor is one type of mulch that I like to use in my landscape. Okay, I think we're moving along at a good rate. So next is rainwater capture and use. Now, one thing when it comes to rainwater, we live in California. We do have what we call our cycles of drought. This year, there's talk about it being a little dry. Not too sure. We're going to see what happens, but when we are able to capture rainwater and use it for use, take advantage of it. There are beautiful ways to accent our landscapes by incorporating rain barrels. You can see by the illustration there of how much 1 inch of rainfall can give you as far as water goes. I know that my rain barrels, when we have a big storm or a quick storm, I have 3 rain barrels. I mean, they fill up quick and it gets used quick. Um, so consider harvesting that rain. So we're going to look at rain barrels first. There's also cisterns. I put a couple pictures of some cisterns. So that's just if you really want to get um, fancy as far as collecting water. But also at the Great Park, there is a home that they have there at the Great Park that it's an energy home. And it also has a cistern, I believe, in the driveway. So go take a look at it if you do get a chance. It's in the lab areas. But when it comes to rain barrels, like I said, there is a rebate for rain barrels that the district offers. There's beautiful rain barrels out there that are decorative. Uh, one thing with rain barrels, you can have fun with them. If you want to have your kids paint them or decorate them, it's the great thing. But they do make a variety of rain barrels. So consider having a rain barrel out there. And once again, when it comes to water, sometimes people are afraid of rain barrels because of the sitting water, but they do make what's called mosquito dunks, the mosquito donuts that you can purchase at a hardware supply store where you just throw them into there if you're worried about mosquitoes, but they'll keep them nice and clean. But also, rainwater is not supposed to be stored away. Use it as soon as you can. You don't want it sitting in there for too long. Rain chains, if to get that water into our landscapes, I love incorporating beautiful rain chains. Uh, they look gorgeous, but they can also help get that water from the roofs and from our gutters. You can collect them in rain barrels or pots, as you can see here, or you can have them go into the landscape and utilize that landscape, utilize stone rocks to slow down that water and spread it throughout the landscape. We don't want that. We don't want to have that rainwater run off, collect pollutants, and then get into our storm drains if possible. We want to be able to utilize it as best as much as we can. So one thing when it comes to our gutters is consider diverting them into the landscape. And you can see here, that gutters is going onto that stone into this little mini creek that they've created. And that's going to get to this next part when it comes to creating what we call our swales, or little sinkholes, little rain gardens, basins where we can low points where we can collect this water when it rains instead of it running off into our storm drains, into our streets. We can have it run into our landscapes, creating these little swales and capture areas where you can plant them around. That water sinks and infiltrates into the ground. It's available for our plants to utilize, and it's just another way to protect our overall watershed. So, one thing about rainwater is we want to slow it down. We want to spread it out. We want it to infiltrate back into the ground and be utilized by our plants, and then get back and be cleaned up by our soils and back into our aquifers. Contour your landscape as best as you can when you're out there, doing a landscape project. I love this dry creek, or this dry pond, if you want to call it, out there. This is an investment when I see this rock and the stone. But once again, on a big rainy day or something, that water will run into here instead of running off into the streets, and that'll collect here, and the plants are going to be able to use that. It's a beautiful rock swale, dry creek. Consider permeable hardscapes. That's one thing. If you're out there doing a walkway or a patio, consider creating it into a permeable area. Um, Talk to, if you're going to do it yourself, of course, do a little reading up on how to create uh, more drainage into your landscape to allow it to drain into the ground, not drain away, but allow that water to go through this hardscape back into the ground. Here, that's some beautiful flagstones. This is similar to what I did on my front yard. I did a turf removal project. I utilized flagstone, which is really great, and you can see a little plantings in between. I've even seen this done with repurposed concrete or recycled concrete from other areas that were broken up. Um, Leave that open areas, allows the water to once again filter through, infiltrate into the ground, keep it on site. Sometimes people come up and they say, what did I plant in between my flagstone? I do have some areas that looks like I planted something, but it's actually weeds. Pavers, one thing about pavers is you can, sand fill them, sand base. Uh, they work really, really great as far as keeping them permeable. There are permeable pavers available. Um, Now there are, if you're going to participate in certain programs, as far as turf removal programs, there are certain caveats have to be met as far as um, paved areas, as far as spacing in between pavers. So um, we'll talk about that. Now, decomposed granite. I love the use of decomposed granite for walkways or open areas. It does. It's a great permeable uh, walkways or areas. Um, it is versatile and expensive. This is the only thing that just be careful sometimes with decomposed granite, especially if you have wood flooring and stuff. You want to keep it away from areas where you can track that indoor into those areas. But overall, it's just adds a great feature into a landscape, and it's also permeable. Selecting climate appropriate plant material. Now, like I said, next month's workshop, Plant Like a Local, we're really going to dive into this a little closer, but just kind of wanted to get into some of the main points right now. So, the right plants for our climate. What are California friendly plants, or do what we call drought tolerant plants? What are California native plants? Is there a difference? California native plants, yes, Some of them, most of them are drought tolerant. Some of them are water loving plants as well. It's really about getting to know what you have out there. Understanding our climate. California is not a desert. When you think about California, you really have to look at our overall ecoregions. We have a Mediterranean climate, yes. Do we have deserts in California? Yes, we do. We do have a desert region like the Mojave. We also have our Mediterranean ecoregions like our central valleys. We're fortunate to have a beautiful, our forested environments, our mountains, such as our Sierras, and then we also have our coastal forests too. We have our chaparrals, our scrublands, our coastal. I mean, just we have very unique climate and regions in California. So when it's time for planting or it's considering California native plants, it's all about learning about these little regions and which plants will do well in those unique areas. Irvine and our surroundings, even almost into the interior, such as San Bernardino, we are what's called our coastal sage scrub plant communities, and there's a lot of different plants that can be utilized here. Now, if you can see here, the Mediterranean climate zones throughout our world, now, plants from all these different regions here will thrive in our in California. We started getting into plant material. You know, California friendly are just when we say California friendly plants or climate appropriate plants, drought tolerant plants, we're talking about plants from all around the world that are acclimated that can acclimate to our California climate easily. They're moderate water users. They do need summer water. They are easy to adapt. Most of these plants, we already utilize them in the landscape. You know, uh, for an example, we have our Indian hawthorn, very common plant that's utilized in landscaping, Raphael epicyntica. That's actually native to southern China. Crepe myrtles, that's pictured here. I love crepe myrtles. Crepe myrtles are indigenous to, I mean, we're talking the Asia, Southern Asia, Southeast Asia, Northern Australia, the Indian subcontinent. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful plants. Well, I love um, crepe myrtles. They're very deep rooted. The branching structures, the trunks, the flowering, the color is just spectacular. Very moderate water users. We have, you know, olive trees. Very, you see those planted everywhere. Olea europaea, Mediterranean plant. And then we have, rock roses. I love rock roses. Native to um, Africa, Morocco, Portugal as well, Canary Islands. Just all these plants are from around the world that are utilized in California. But once again, they're moderate water users. As we get into the summer, sure, they'll require water, but not as much as grass areas. Now, when it comes to our beautiful native plants, I would recommend you to go to the California Native Plant Society's website, but the CalScape website is a great resource for looking up native plants. California native plants, they do require different care throughout the year to non-native drought-tolerant plants or climate other exotic species, um, and of course the water use. Here's some great points when it comes to California native plants. Yes, we incorporate our native plants and we're building these habitat areas. Um, but look at those other points. They're fully or partially summer dormant, and that's one of the key things. I know that I'm a plant lover. I have almost every single plant types you can think of, but when it comes to my native plant areas, they are separated from my other exotic species because my native areas this past summer, I maybe watered them. Well, I did water them about once a month throughout the summertime. More of a deep soaking and sometimes a quick little wash off, but that was basically it for my native plants throughout this past summer, even though it was really hot. One thing is that you got to understand is our native plants have adapted, to our climate. They bring in, I mean, the plants themselves have unique characteristics that help them through these heat spells. Yes, we've had some really big heat spells here and there, and I've seen them, take damage some of our native plants where just the reflective heat was just way too much for a lot of them. Sometimes they burnt out, but it's going to happen here and there with native plants, non-native plants. It's just one of those things that happens in landscapes. But a lot of these plants are, I mean, they're built. Native plants are built for our areas. They will weather the storm when it comes to these heat spells. And so here is so I put a graph on here. It's a graph that that I use quite a bit, but for those who live in our service area, we create water budgets based on three weather stations that we have in our service area. We have one weather station foothill, one centrally, and one coastal. And this bar graph that you're seeing here is water loss from our central weather station. And so that central weather station sits on top of cool season grass, and it's measuring how much water it loses throughout the year. And based on these figures, and our formulas, we budget so much water for a landscape, and our water budgets are based on um, what we call our climate appropriate landscapes, moderate water use plants. Here is our normal rain pattern throughout the year. Now, hopefully this year it'll be the same, but right around this kind of an average rain pattern for California, especially for our region. This is how much water a cool season grass requires. Is this cool season? Yes, I believe so. And climate appropriate plants, as you can see here, here's the amount of water they need throughout the year. As you can see, it's about half the water than that cool season grass lost throughout the year. Now, so as you can see, this bell curve, this is our normal watering practices. So we know that as it starts to get warmer, we start to increase our watering. And right now, we're in October now. September was the month to really start to reduce by 30%, because yes, it's still warm, but the days are getting shorter. Our plants know this. They actually start to close up. You can see even cool season grass from this weather station. Right when it hits September, the water usage goes way down. And we're talking about the highest water use plant we have. But right now, this is the time where we really got to start reducing our overall water use in our landscapes. Now, when it comes to these plant types, the grass and moderate water use plants are climate appropriate. You can see here they need that summer water. But what do you think that native plants are going to do? Now, when we look at native plants, it's the complete opposite. As the summer approaches, they start to go dormant. Now, once again, not every single native plant. It's about you really have to look at these different regions of where these plants grow and how they grow, and which ones actually will like a little bit of summer water here and there. But as you can see here, the usage drops dramatically. And then once again, when the rainy seasons come, they start to pick up their water use, and hopefully the rains come and will provide that water where the other plants will start to go into decline. Um, this slide just talks about hydrozoning, and hydrozoning is just, it's plain and simple, just grouping plants with similar water needs, similar sun requirements, just all together. If you're going to have a native area, make sure it's being watered completely different than your non-native or your exotic California-friendly landscapes. And that's just a good general practice for any kind of landscape. It's just to group those plants together with similar needs so they get that same care, same water throughout the year. Oh yeah, I love talking about plant names. So one thing, next class we're really going to get into this, but I just wanted, this is just to bring up the importance of trying to learn those scientific names that are a little tricky to say sometimes, and relying less on common names. When it comes to common names of plants, common names, they differ from cultures, people, countries here and there. But for instance, mock orange, typically, if I go to a nursery and I ask for a mock orange, I might get one or the other when it comes to, if I ask somebody what a mock orange is, the name I usually get is they say, oh, it's Pittosporum toberi, which is mock orange. Yes, but it's actually Japanese mock orange. It's also known as cheesewood. It has a bunch of different common names. But if I would have asked for that plant by that botanical name, I would have got exactly that. But myself, if I go ask for a mock orange, I was actually looking for Philadelphus louisii, which is our California native mock orange. You can see that it's quite a different plant, but what a gorgeous, you know, shrub. You can see how much bloom we have on there. So that's just one of the things about these plant names is just getting to learn these names somewhat when you're out there looking for plant material. Write down these botanical names so when you go and purchase them, you know exactly what to get, what to look for. Especially when we start getting into different cultivars or varieties, because that's really going to change quite a bit when it comes to these plant materials. I know when it comes to earlier I was talking about Indian hawthorn. Indian hawthorn, there's so many different cultivars. Excuse me. Um, there's low-lying cultivars. There's um, majestic beauty, which is a larger tree of Raphael epicinica. But once again, it's important to get these names down. Here we have Rosa californica, our beautiful California wild rose to the left, and to the right we have Rosa floribunda iceberg. And floribunda, the species name tells me quite a bit. I know that flori means flower, and bunda means abundant. So we know that Rosa floribunda really goes into bloom, as you can see to the right. But iceberg has that beautiful scent of flowers. I'm sure when you walk by that rose shrub there, it'll really give you that beautiful sweet fragrance in the landscape. And one thing about roses is they are drought tolerant. Roses require deep, very infrequent watering. Now, when it comes to water efficiency, and earlier we were talking about, um, the importance of hopefully using rainwater as a source. That's what we should be using always is rainwater. If when we do have it, utilize it. Shape our landscapes. Contour the lands to trap that water and make it available for our plants. Something we should always hopefully consider when it comes to our landscapes. Hand watering is very efficient, when you're out there trying to water because you know exactly where you want to place that water. Um, I didn't talk about it, but when it comes to watering, the best time to irrigate is always early morning hours because you want to get that water into our soils, into our nice soil sponge, and have that water get down to the roots and be available for the plant as the day goes on. And also that's important thing to consider about putting mulch out there because mulch will keep that moisture level in that soil there for the roots to be utilized. Um, some people do water in the afternoons or in the evenings, which is, it's not recommended, especially afternoons. Just like when we start to get tired in the afternoons and we go to sleep at night, the plants will do a similar thing. They'll start to slow down in the afternoon. In the evening, they're in that little sleep state until the sun comes up, and then they're off and running doing their thing. So once again, I recommend you to water early morning in the hours, early morning, and get the water going out, getting ready for the day for your plant material. Um, yeah, so water early morning. Now, when it comes to efficient irrigation, an irrigation system, what does it do? Basically, we're just trying to mimic rainfall. We're trying to have a system that's efficient. There are smart controllers out there that use weather to water your landscapes. Um, we're trying to manipulate these irrigation sprinklers to get water into the landscape as best as possible. There's drip irrigation out there. There are water efficient nozzles. There are rotors. Now, when it comes to irrigation, in December, we are going to be having a sprinkler spruce up workshop where we'll really get into sprinklers. And I'm glad we're hosting it in winter in December because that's when it's time to really get on our sprinklers, check them, make sure they're working as efficient as possible. So as the time comes when we do need them and we rely on them, they're working at an optimum level to hopefully put that water out in the landscape as best as possible. So consider updating your sprinkler system. But one thing when it comes to that is just doing a check on them. Probably it's coming up in a slide, but checking your sprinklers is crucial, no matter if you're a professional or a novice. Um, Drip irrigation, when it comes to drip irrigation on the sprinkler spruce up workshop, we are going to get into um, drip retrofitting, but drip, there's efficient ways to do drip. Here you see a couple of, you see some micro bubblers and some micro sprays with spaghetti tubing, but sometimes we're really starting to get away from this. This is great and everything, but what we're really doing now when it comes to drip retrofitting is we're creating row spacings using what's called inline emitter tubing. And this tubing here has the emitters built in, and we're creating kind of a grid system. This body that you're looking at here is it's a body that was created to do an easy conversion from spray head areas into drip by simply installing a retrofit body like this. So this body has a filter and a pressure regulator built in. So this is a good way to do a retrofit. So if you're interested in learning more about converting um, existing irrigation into drip, please sign up for our December workshop, Sprinkler Spruce Up, where we're going to get into this. Now, when it comes to irrigation issues, I'm sure you guys have seen it. I've seen it. Um, it happens. Sprinkler systems fail, they break. My kids walk on them, they break them. My dad likes to drive over his sprinkler at least once every month, and I have to go out there and fix it. But maintenance is key, whether it's your gardener or yourselves. Simply just go out, turn on your sprinkler system, and do a walkthrough. If you see an issue, fix it as quickly as possible. If it's a line break, turn off that zone, that area, and get it repaired. um, you know, Note any kind of issues, but also, take a look at that sprinkler system and see if you can retrofit it. What can be done now. If a missing nozzle, one little missing nozzle, that nozzle oh, gone missing, or that break can waste as much as 40 gallons every minute. Now, if this is going on and we don't see it happen, that our system's running, in the middle of the night or in the early morning, and we're asleep, we're never going to see that water run off, and then we're going to have that waste. So I've seen this go on quite a bit of times. So it's really up to us to uh, to get out there and do an inspection of our sprinkler system at least twice a month, or once a month, at least once. But if you can do it more often, that's even better, because these issues go on, and then we don't catch them until we get that high bill. Okay, so we're nearing the stretch. We're going to get into just a little bit of more information. Once again, I thank you all for joining us for our workshop. As far as residential incentives, we do have our turf removal program. Right now, it's $2 per square foot of grass that you remove, and up to 5,000 square feet maximum. And there's a minimum square footage. Now, like, once again, there are some requirements with any of these programs. If you are interested in any of these rebate programs, make sure to go to our website and take a look at them, read the terms and conditions, and please do not begin a project before getting approval. I see that happen quite a bit, where a customer will go out and do the project and then apply for the program, and it's kind of too late. A lot of these programs, yes, we administer them here, but a lot of them are regional programs where the um, the main people in charge of these programs they have certain requirements that have to be met. So make sure you read the terms and conditions for any of these programs. On our RightScape Now website, you can find information on various rebate programs that we have, from smart timers, nozzles, and so forth, even indoor appliances. We have great websites to go to, such as our rightscapenow.com website, where you can find information, of course, to sign up for our upcoming workshops. So next month, we have Plant Like a Local, November 18th, and Wednesday, December 9th, we have our Sprinkler Spruce Up workshop. We do have our RightScape resources website, and oh, here we go. If you have any questions, if you have any questions regarding landscaping, feel free to shoot me an email at askjuan@irwd.com, and I'll be able to hopefully answer your questions. If not, I can make sure to get you the best resource possible. So really quick, I wanted to show you, here is our rightscapenow.com website. If you have information here, you can go to How Do I, and there's some great information on watering schedules, a water efficient landscape, even how to calculate how much water your irrigation system is using. Our events and classes workshop, and of course, our rebate programs can be found here. So you click on rebates, go to residential or commercial or public, depending on where you're at. Just follow the page and the links, and here's information on all our rebates. I will be emailing a PDF of these rebates with links on there as well. But here's our rain barrels we talked about earlier, and cisterns, turf removal program. There's even a drip program, a drip conversion. Here are the lines I was telling you about. These are the inline emitter tubing. But once again, these links will take you to different pages, so don't be afraid. Once you hit on view the or even apply now, as you can see here, the apply now will take you to a different page, which is the Municipal Water District of Orange County's page. So you can make sure you read the information on the programs, terms and conditions, and it'll tell you how to apply or what to do for these programs. And one of my favorite sites I love to utilize, and I'll go through this site next month as well, but this is our RightScapeResources.com website. It's our great landscaping, gardening website where you can do plant searches, guided searches. What I really love is this fact sheets here. Today we were talking about watershed, so you can go to solving runoff problems. Here's some important information right on watershed, stormwater runoff, dry creek beds. I mean, everything that we've talked about today, you can find some great information on here. Managing your soil, some great fact sheets here. Composting for healthy soils and plants, the magic of mulch, the right plant, the right place, even dealing with the drought, sustainable. There's great information on here. We do have a recommended watering schedule on our IRWD.com website or our RightScapeNow.com website. But if you want to create your own customized watering schedule, if you go to RightScape Resources down here, that'll take you to our water calculator page with some information on here. Click on the water calculator, and then you can get started on creating a schedule for your property. Just make sure to enter in the appropriate information. It's a great website. It's our rightscaperesources.com. And of course, we have our rightscapenow.com website, and of course, our IRWD.com. Let's see. Okay, let's get back to our presentation here. For any questions, you can email us at info@irwd.com. There is our phone number for our customer service, and of course our website's there. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and informative videos on YouTube. Once again, thank you so much for attending. What time is it here? Hopefully we have a little time. We have about 5 minutes, but I will be here for a little Q&A. Mr. Joey, how are you doing today?
Hey Juan, great job.
Thank you. Well, thank you everybody once again. If you could stay here for a little bit longer, everybody, we're going to be going hopefully to a couple of these questions or a few of these questions. But once again, if you submit questions or if you submitted questions via the chat, I'll make sure to address them all in the email that I'm going to send out after we are done, hopefully by this week. If not, by next week, you'll be getting an email packed full of information and slides and everything. So, and
So
hopefully
Juan,
we'll be having, yeah,
our
I'm sorry.
first question, if you wouldn't mind going back to your ETO graph, And if you
Y-
could explain what ETO means on that slide.
Oh, let me get back. Of course, this has happened now. Oh, good. Somebody has a nice technical question. All right. All right. Right here, ETO. Okay, so plants, or we measure water loss for plants in two ways. So plants lose water. We call that transpiration when the water goes through the roots and out through the pores of the plants in water vapor. We call that transpiration. And then water is also lost from the soil and from sitting water on top of plant material. That's just done through evaporation. So we link both of those words together, and it's called evapotranspiration. And we use these weather stations to measure that. Like I said, we have weather stations here in Irvine, but the state also has weather stations throughout our state. And you can actually go to simis.ca.gov and look at the weather stations throughout our entire state that are doing the exact same thing. They're sitting on top of grass, cool season grass, and they're measuring water loss for all these different regions. And based on that, um, a lot of different agencies or people, they create water budgets based on that. We are fortunate enough with our district to have our very own weather stations that are doing that specifically for our customers in these three unique areas, which is our foothills, our central area, and of course our coastal customers. Yeah, so that's all. That's what ETO is. It's basically it's a number of water loss. So by this graph here, we measure water loss in plant material and or ETO in inches. So you can see here in July, cool season grass that weather station is sitting on lost around 6 inches of water. And just like rainfall, we measure rainfall in inches. When we talk about rain, we say so many inches of rainfall fell. Our sprinkler systems puts out water also in inches, but we have to categorize it as we say inches per hour. We have to put a time on it. So if we know how many inches of water something lost, we can put that water right back. And that's what this graph is telling us. For instance, climate appropriate plants, we're going to give it back around around 3 inches of water that it lost in July compared to the cool season grass, which lost 6. Climate appropriate plants only require right around 3 inches of water. So that, along with other information when creating our budgets, is how we come up with our water budgets using this ETO information and what we call our plant factors or plant water requirements. All right.
Perfect, Juan. I think you hit it. The next question we have here is, can we bury drip lines, or is there specific ways to install drip lines?
Yeah. For the workshop on sprinklers, we'll get into that a lot more, but there is drip line that is actually made to be buried in the ground. So you have to make sure you do buy that type of drip tubing that can actually be buried. And of course, there's recommended depths on how to bury it and also spacing. So if that's what refer that to subsurface irrigation. It's been practiced forever, for a long time. It's getting better and better. The lines don't clog up. I mean, they're engineered so they're self-flushing. But there's once again, just like with any product, make sure you to read upon it and refer to a professional if needed.
Perfect. We have a couple of questions here about compost. Uh,
Yes,
does your compost smell? Is our first question. Th-
it shouldn't smell. When you're doing composting and you're doing it the right way, it shouldn't have any kind of foul odors. It should smell. There is a so-called fragrance to it, but it's nothing foul. One thing about compost is, it's only green materials and brown materials. Never add any meats, dairy, anything like that. You got to be careful on what you put on it because that's when it will start to smell and bring in critters. And it's just the way you mix it up. Watering it is at certain intervals is very important. Once again, if you go to the Master Gardeners of Orange County website, OC Master Gardeners. Uh, there's some great videos on composting, but I'll be putting in these links in the email response to everybody.
Perfect. And then the other two along that same compost question. How long does it take before I can use my compost? And how do you keep bugs away from the compost?
Oh, that's a good one. I see bugs in mine. It depends on what kind of composting you're doing. If you're doing cold composting, hot composting, I do. I have mine are all hot composting, which means they're in a bin and they're covered. And the hotter it gets, the faster it breaks down. But also you have to till it or turn it. So how often are you turning it? It is a process. It does take time. But once again, if you're moving it around and you're doing it right, it can take a couple months or so to make compost. It's about once again how hot you get it, and also heat is very important because it'll help break down that compost faster, but also get rid of a lot of pathogens if there's any kind of issues like that, even weeds, weed seeds. Yeah, there's just once again OC Master Gardener's website and their tutorials are they have great information on there on composting and temperatures and the whole 9 yards. Good stuff. Okay. Anything else, Joey? Well, it is 1 o'clock. For those of you who do have to go ahead and leave, thank you once again for your time. Once again, we're going to be posting this workshop on our website. I will make sure to email everybody these slides and any kind of other informative uh, forms that we have, and I'll be putting in some links and answering all these questions that were submitted to the chat. Thank you so much for joining us for our RightScape webinar series. Join us hopefully next month for our Plants Like a Local and then our Sprinkler Spruce Up in December. Thank you so much. And once again, if any questions, please email me at askwon@irwd.com. Joey, Melody, thank you. And to everybody out there, have a great afternoon and a great weekend.